Welcome, servants of the dark truth. Today we witness what happens when perfect martial transcendence collides with the infinite corruption of the warp. When a warrior beyond godhood faces entities that exist as pure malevolent thought. This is the tale of Ultra Instinct meeting its antithesis, a being of perfect reaction trapped in a realm where action itself becomes corruption, where every dodge feeds Khorne's rage, every adaptation serves Tzeentch's schemes. Every moment of stillness empowers Nurgle's entropy, and every perfect movement gives glory to Slaanesh's excess. Can pure martial perfection exist when the very act of perfection becomes a form of worship to dark gods? And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if it truly resonates with you. The first sign was not the tearing of reality, it was the silence. Across the demon world of Medrengard, the eternal screaming stopped. Every tortured soul embedded in the living architecture of Perturabo's fortress fell quiet. Every demon engine ceased its mechanical shrieking. Even the warp itself seemed to hold its breath. Then he appeared, not through a warp rift, not through any portal the Iron Warriors recognized. One moment, there was nothing but the blood-red sky, and the next, a figure floated above the twisted spires. Silver hair that defied the laws of physics, eyes like mercury, an aura that made reality itself bend and ripple around him. I was there. I saw it happen. Tech Priest Kalos 9, attached to the Iron Warriors' Third Grand Company. My augmented eyes recorded everything, though the data makes no sense. The energy readings were impossible. No Psyker signature, no warp presence, yet power radiated from him like heat from a star. Lord Vornak was the first to react. The Chaos Lord raised his demon weapon and roared a challenge that should have summoned 1,000 warriors, but his voice came out wrong. Distorted, the very air refused to carry it properly, because the stranger's presence made the atmosphere forget how sound worked. The stranger tilted his head, curious, not afraid, never afraid. This place reeks of suffering, he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Are you the ones responsible for this? Vornak charged. A Chaos Space Marine moving at full sprint is faster than most humans can track. His demon sword screamed as it cut through the air, hungry for blood. The blade had drunk the souls of champions across 10,000 years. The stranger didn't move. Not consciously. His body simply wasn't there when the sword arrived. He stood 3 feet to the left, still watching with those silver eyes. Vornak spun, struck again, missed again. The pattern repeated 17 times before the Chaos Lord realized what was happening. Witch, Vornak snarled. You dare use sorcery against the chosen of the dark gods? I'm not using anything, the stranger replied. His tone suggested he was telling the truth. My body just moves on its own now. It's called Ultra Instinct. That name meant nothing to us then. We thought him some Xenos champion, perhaps Eldari given his speed. The Inquisition would later classify him as Xenos Horrificus Extremis. They were wrong about everything. The battle lasted 43 seconds. Vornak never touched him, not once. Every attack, every feint, every trap the Chaos Lord had learned in 10 millennia of warfare meant nothing. The stranger's body reacted before Vornak's neurons finished firing. Before thought became action, the counter was already complete. When Vornak fell, his armor cracked open like an egg. The stranger looked up at the demon engines converging on his position. Helldrakes screamed from the sky. Defilers scuttled forward on corrupted legs. A Khitan demon engine, 30 feet of possessed adamantium and rage, charged with its great cleaver raised. He sighed, just sighed, like he was disappointed. The explosion of light that followed burned out every optical sensor for 3 miles. When my systems rebooted, the demon engines were gone, not destroyed, not even scattered debris, simply erased. Where they had been, the ground was smooth glass that reflected a sky that wasn't red anymore. For a few seconds it showed stars, real stars. Not the twisted mockeries the Eye of Terror usually displayed. That's when the warp noticed him. You have to understand, the Eye of Terror is not just a place. It's a wound in reality where the immaterium bleeds through. Demons don't need summoning there. They simply are. And they felt him. Every daemon within 100 light years turned toward Medrengard like iron filings to a magnet. The first wave came as a tide of bloodletters. Khorne's foot soldiers, armed with hellblades that burn souls. 10,000 of them poured from tears in reality, their brass collars ringing a symphony of war. The stranger watched them come. He raised one hand. What happened next violated every law of physics I had been programmed to understand. He didn't attack them. He simply moved, but his movement created pressure waves that shouldn't exist in that atmosphere. The air itself became a weapon. 10,000 demons shattered like glass figurines dropped from orbit. But killing demons in the Eye of Terror doesn't destroy them. It just sends them back to the warp to reform. And when they reformed, they came back different. Marked. They screamed about a power that burned them in ways Khorne's flames never could. A light that existed outside the Great Game. The second wave was worse. Plague Marines of Nurgle, their bloated bodies weeping disease. Lords of Change, Tzeentch's greater demons, weaving spells that could rewrite reality. Keepers of secrets, Slaanesh princes of excess, moving with grace that exceeded even the stranger's speed. He fought them all. Have you ever wondered which of the galaxy's corruptions would claim them first? Drop your theories in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in thinking about this. The stranger's fighting style changed with each opponent. Against Nurgle's champions, he burned so bright their diseases couldn't take hold. Against Tzeentch's sorcery, his body adapted, moving through 9 dimensions to avoid spells that existed in only 3. Against Slaanesh's servants, he achieved a perfection of motion that made their grace look clumsy. But something was happening to him. I could see it in my readings. Every demon he destroyed, every impossible feat he performed, it was tearing something, not in him, in reality itself. The space around him started to crack like broken glass. Through the cracks, I saw things that shouldn't exist. Other universes, other possibilities. Places where the warp had never been born. Lord Admiral Kronos arrived with the Iron Warriors fleet. 100 ships opened fire with weapons that could crack continents. Cyclonic torpedoes, virus bombs, weapons forbidden even by chaos for their sheer destructiveness. The stranger raised both hands and caught them. Not metaphorically. He literally caught apocalyptic weapons like they were tennis balls, examined them with curiosity, then crushed them into nothing. Your weapons are powered by suffering, he said. His voice carried across the void despite the absence of air. Every Vox unit on every ship received his words. I can feel the souls trapped inside them. This is wrong. This is all wrong. That's when he began to glow brighter. The silver aura became white, then something beyond white, a color that hurt to perceive even through my mechanical eyes. The energy pouring off him started to affect the Eye of Terror itself. The great warp storm that had raged for 10,000 years began to flicker. On the bridge of the bitter vengeance, Chaos Sorcerer Valdek the Illuminated screamed. Blood poured from his eyes as his connection to the warp shattered. He's not using the warp, Valdek gasped. His power comes from somewhere else, somewhere the dark gods can't reach. He's making a hole. He's puncturing through to something beyond. The fleet retreated, not out of cowardice, but from a survival instinct older than reason. When reality itself becomes uncertain, even the veterans of the long war know to withdraw. But the stranger followed. Not aggressively, curious. He wanted to understand why we served chaos, why we had chosen damnation. His questions were simple, almost childlike. Don't we want to be stronger through our own effort? Why do we let other beings control our power? What happened to make us this way? Lord Admiral Kronos made the decision that would change everything. He ordered a message sent to the other demon worlds, to the Plague Planet, to the Crystal Labyrinth, to the Palace of Pleasure, to the Brass Citadel. The message was simple. We have found something the gods must see. The stranger heard the transmission. His expression changed. For the first time since his arrival, he looked interested, almost excited. These chaos gods you keep mentioning, he said. They're strong. We told him yes. The strongest beings in existence. Eternal, immortal, omnipotent within their realms. He smiled. It was the smile of someone who had been looking for a worthy challenge for a very long time. Good. I haven't had a real fight since the Tournament of Power. Maybe they can push me to improve even more. He didn't understand what he was saying. Ultra Instinct made his body perfect in battle, but it couldn't prepare his mind for what chaos truly was. The corruption that seeped into every atom of reality here. The way the dark gods didn't just fight with power, but with corruption itself. Already, I could see the signs, tiny changes. His perfect silver aura flickered sometimes, showing other colors beneath. Red when he grew excited about battle, blue when he contemplated the suffering around him, purple when he moved with perfect grace, green when he stood still, uncaring about the passage of time. The Eye of Terror was beginning to notice him, really notice him, and in the warp, 4 great consciousnesses turned their attention to this impossible being who existed outside their game. The first god to answer was Khorne. He didn't send heralds or omens. The blood god simply reached through reality and pulled the stranger into his realm. One moment we were watching from our ships, the next he vanished into a rent in space that bled literal blood. The brass citadel is not a place mortals can comprehend. I know because Valdek tried to scry what happened there, and his third eye exploded. But we saw the effects. Every warrior in the Eye of Terror, loyalist prisoners and chaos servants alike, felt their blood burn. We felt rage that wasn't ours. We felt the echo of a battle that transcended physical combat. The stranger fought Khorne's greatest champions first. Angron, demon primarch of the World Eaters, struck with such fury that the impact created new constellations in the warp. The stranger dodged without thinking, countered without planning. His body moved through possibilities that hadn't been chosen yet. When Angron's axe finally shattered against the stranger's bare hand, the demon primarch laughed. "You fight without hatred," Angron roared. "Without fury. How can you be so strong without rage?" "Rage clouds judgment," the stranger replied. Ultra Instinct requires clarity. But Khorne's realm doesn't allow clarity. Every moment there is battle. Every second is violence. The stranger fought for what we later calculated as 17 Terran days without rest. Bloodthirsters came in waves. Fleshhounds hunted him through mazes of bone. The ground itself grew weapons to impale him. He never tired. His body simply kept moving, kept fighting, kept winning. But something else was happening. Each victory made him smile wider. Each stronger opponent made his eyes burn brighter. The joy of battle was seeping into him drop by drop. When Khorne himself finally manifested, not as an avatar but as a concept of war-given form, the stranger's aura had gained red streaks. Thin at first, like blood vessels under skin. "You cannot defeat war itself," Khorne's voice was every battle cry ever uttered. "I am conflict eternal. I am the moment when fist meets flesh. I exist as long as violence exists." The stranger's response broke something fundamental. He didn't try to defeat Khorne. He absorbed him, not consciously. Ultra Instinct doesn't work that way. But his body, always seeking the perfect counter, found the only response to eternal war: become war yourself. For 3 seconds, the stranger was Khorne. We saw it from our ships as reality hemorrhaged. Every weapon in the Eye of Terror fired simultaneously. Every warrior struck at whatever was nearest. Planets collided because the concept of conflict had been condensed into a single point. Then the stranger expelled it, vomited Khorne back into existence with such force that the blood god's realm cracked. The brass citadel, which had stood since the first murder, developed fractures that wept boiling blood. The stranger reappeared in real space, gasping. His perfect form showed its first imperfection, a single drop of red in his silver eyes that wouldn't go away. Tzeentch came next. The architect of fate doesn't fight, he manipulates. The moment the stranger returned, reality around him became uncertain. Which ship was he standing on? All of them. None of them. The question became meaningless. Every possible future attacked him at once. Versions of himself from timelines where he had already fallen to chaos. A Khorne Goku whose Ultra Instinct manifested as infinite aggression. A Nurgle Goku who had achieved perfect stillness through accepting decay. A Slaanesh Goku who had pushed his body beyond every limit in pursuit of greater sensation. The stranger fought himself 10,000 times. Each victory created a paradox. How can Ultra Instinct, which reacts perfectly to any threat, react to itself? The feedback loop tore holes in causality. Effects preceded causes. Deaths happened before births. Then Tzeentch showed him the truth. Or a truth. Or a lie shaped like truth. In the vision, everyone the stranger had ever protected was already dead. Had always been dead. Would be dead. The tournament of power, his entire universe, erased by chaos retroactively. The only way to save them was to change. To evolve. To become something more than mortal. "Your power denies change," Tzeentch whispered through 900 mouths. "But change is the only constant. Even your Ultra Instinct must evolve or become obsolete." The stranger's body began to shift. Not consciously. Ultra Instinct adapted to the threat by trying to predict every possible change simultaneously. His form became fluid, uncertain. For 17 minutes, he existed in a superposition of states. Mortal and god. Pure and corrupt. Real and imaginary. When he finally stabilized, his hair flickered between silver and colors that shouldn't exist. Each strand was a different possibility. The drop of red in his eyes had been joined by a spiral of blue that moved without pattern. If you had their power in the Imperium, would you choose loyalty, heresy, or stay neutral? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading them. Nurgle's corruption was subtler. It didn't come as an attack but as an offering. Wherever the stranger went, peace followed. Not true peace. Nurgle's peace. The peace of acceptance. The peace of ending. Planets he passed fell silent. Not dead. Worse, their inhabitants simply stopped. Stopped struggling. Stopped hoping. Stopped fearing. They stood in place, smiling, as their bodies began the slow transformation into Nurgle's garden. The stranger tried to help them. His energy could purify any physical corruption, burn away any disease, but Nurgle's gift wasn't physical. It was existential. The people didn't want to be saved. They had accepted their fate, and acceptance, Nurgle explained through the bloated lips of his herald, was just another form of enlightenment. Your Ultra Instinct is acceptance. The Plague Father's voice was the whisper of entropy. You accept every attack without resistance. You flow like water around obstacles. You have already embraced my philosophy. You just call it by a different name. The stranger's perfect movements began to slow. Not from exhaustion, but from understanding. Why dodge when you could accept? Why fight when everything ends anyway? His silver aura developed spots of green that spread like mold. For 7 days, he stood completely still. Not frozen, simply choosing not to move. Demons crawled over him. Plague Marines built shrines around him. He became a monument to Nurgle's truth that all action was ultimately meaningless. What broke him free was memory, a friend's voice from another universe saying his name, just his name. Goku! That simple sound contained identity, purpose, connection, things that existed outside Nurgle's despair. He moved again, but the green spots remained. 3 colors now swirled in his eyes, red, blue, and green. The corruption was accumulating. Slaanesh was the last and the cruelest. The Dark Prince didn't attack the stranger's body or mind. Slaanesh attacked his very nature. What was Ultra Instinct but the pursuit of perfection? What was the stranger but someone who had pushed every boundary to achieve the impossible? You and I are the same. Slaanesh sang through reality itself. We both seek to transcend limitation, to experience every sensation, to become more than what we are. The Palace of Pleasure reshaped itself into an infinite training ground. Each room contained a stronger opponent. Each victory unlocked greater challenges. The stranger's joy was palpable. This was what he lived for, the endless pursuit of improvement. But Slaanesh's gift was excess. Each opponent wasn't just stronger, but more perfect. Their techniques weren't just advanced, but beautiful. The stranger found himself admiring their forms, their movements, their dedication to their art. He began to fight not just to win, but to experience the pleasure of perfect combat. His Ultra Instinct evolved again. Now it didn't just react to attacks but sought them out. His body moved toward danger because danger meant growth. Pain became pleasure because pain meant he was pushing his limits. His silver aura gained purple veins that pulsed with each heartbeat. When he finally emerged from the palace, he was different, still himself but more. His power hadn't just grown, it had transformed. Where Ultra Instinct had once been about unconscious reaction, it now incorporated conscious desire. The desire for battle, the joy of growth, the pleasure of perfection. 4 colors swirled in his eyes now. 4 corruptions that his body couldn't expel because they hadn't invaded him. He had absorbed them, made them part of his perfect form. The 4 knew what had to be done. For the first time since the birth of Slaanesh, the Chaos Gods ceased their great game. Khorne withdrew his armies from Tzeentch's crystal labyrinth. Nurgle recalled his plagues from Slaanesh's pleasure worlds. The warp itself shuddered as ancient enemies became temporary allies. I witnessed the convergence from the bridge of the bitter vengeance. Every augur screen showed the same impossible reading. 4 infinite powers focusing on a single point, the spot where the stranger floated above a dead world. His corrupted aura making reality itself uncertain. He was talking to himself, or to someone who wasn't there. Vegeta would say, "I've gotten soft," he murmured. His voice carried across the void, letting their power affect me. But it's not weakness, it's growth, right? Every fighter adapts to their opponent. I'm just adapting to gods. The 4 colors in his eyes swirled faster. Sometimes red dominated and his muscles tensed for battle. Sometimes green took over and he relaxed into acceptance. Blue brought rapid shifts in form. Purple made him laugh at the beauty of his own corruption. Then they came. Not as avatars or heralds, but as concepts given will. The 4 who are one. Khorne attacked first, because Khorne always attacks first. But this wasn't violence as mortals understand it. This was the idea of violence. Every war that had ever been fought, compressed into a single strike. The stranger's Ultra Instinct moved him away, but the attack followed. It existed wherever he existed, because violence is everywhere. His body found the only counter. Become peace. For an instant, the stranger achieved true pacifism, not just avoiding violence, but negating its very possibility. Khorne's attack dissolved, but Tzeentch had planned for this. Peace is change from war. Change is Tzeentch. The stranger's transformation into peace became a doorway for the architect of fate. 999 spells hit him simultaneously, each one rewriting a different aspect of his existence. Ultra Instinct adapted by becoming everything at once. Every possible version of the stranger existed simultaneously. Warrior and pacifist, god and mortal. Pure and corrupted. The sheer impossibility of it started tearing holes in reality. Nurgle's contribution was patience. While the stranger fought to maintain coherence against infinite possibilities, entropy crept in. Not as an attack, but as a law of nature. All things decay, even Ultra Instinct, even perfection. The stranger's perfect form began to show its first true signs of degradation. A movement a microsecond too slow, a counter a millimeter off target. And in that imperfection, Slaanesh found purchase. The Dark Prince whispered the cruelest truth. That imperfection was beautiful. That the stranger's slow corruption was the greatest art ever performed. That his fall from grace would be a sensation beyond any other. You cannot fight us all, the four spoke in harmony. We are the fundamental forces of existence, conflict and change, decay and excess. To defeat us is to defeat reality itself. The stranger's response shattered every expectation. He stopped fighting. Not in surrender. Not in acceptance. He simply stopped treating them as enemies. Ultra Instinct had evolved beyond reaction to achieve something impossible. Understanding. You're not evil, he said. His voice was certain despite the chaos around him. You're broken. All of you. You were born from emotions, but you've forgotten what emotions are for. Anger without purpose. Change without growth. Acceptance without peace. Pleasure without joy. The four recoiled. In 10,000 years, no one had ever pitied them. The stranger continued. In my universe, we have gods too. But they can be better. They can learn. They can grow beyond their nature. You're stuck in patterns because you think that's all you are. But what if you could be more? He raised his hand, not to attack but to offer. The gesture was so unexpected that for an instant, the warp itself went silent. Let me show you. What happened next broke every law the Imperium had about chaos. The stranger didn't fight the four. He trained them. His Ultra Instinct, which had evolved to counter any threat, evolved again to teach any student. He showed Khorne that true strength comes not from endless battle, but from protecting what matters. That the greatest warriors fight not for blood, but for purpose. The blood god's rage flickered, became focused, almost noble. He showed Tzeentch that real change means growth, not just mutation. That the greatest plans are those that elevate everyone, not just the schemer. The architect's endless plots simplified, became comprehensible, almost helpful. He showed Nurgle that acceptance doesn't mean stagnation, that understanding mortality makes life more precious, not less. The Plague Father's diseases became lessons in resilience. His decay became renewal. He showed Slaanesh that perfection is a journey, not a destination. That true pleasure comes from improvement, not excess. The Dark Prince's obsessions became aspirations, desires became dreams. For one impossible moment, the Chaos Gods weren't Chaos Gods. They were something else. Something that could have been, should have been, if the galaxy hadn't been broken for so long. Then reality reasserted itself. The four remembered what they were, what they had to be. They were born from the galaxy's pain and fed on its suffering. To change would be to cease existing. And existence, even corrupted existence, was all they had. Their rejection hit the stranger like a physical blow, not because they attacked him, but because they didn't. They simply reverted, and in reverting, made his offer meaningless. You cannot save us, they said. We are what we are because the galaxy is what it is. As long as mortals feel rage, we will be rage. As long as they fear change, we will be malicious change. As long as they fear death, we will be despair. As long as they desire more, we will be excess. The stranger's perfect form began to crack, not from damage but from sorrow. His Ultra Instinct, which had evolved to handle any physical threat, couldn't process this emotional weight. The four colors in his eyes began to merge, creating something new, something unprecedented. Then I'll change the galaxy, he said. Power erupted from him. Not ki, Not psychic energy, not warp energy, something else, something that existed outside all known systems. It was the power of possibility itself, the power to be other than what you are. The wave spread from the Eye of Terror across the galaxy at the speed of thought. Wherever it touched, things changed, not dramatically, subtly. A Chaos Marine remembered his name from before the fall. A demon wondered what it felt like to create instead of destroy. An Inquisitor questioned whether all mutation was truly heretical. Small changes, tiny cracks in absolute certainties. But in a galaxy built on absolutes, even small cracks could bring down empires. The Four attacked with everything they had, not to kill the stranger but to stop what he was becoming. Because he wasn't becoming a chaos god. He was becoming something antithetical to chaos. A god of choice, a god of possibility, a god that said you don't have to be what you've always been. The battle lasted for subjective eternities and objective instants. Time meant nothing when gods fought. The stranger's ultra instinct transcended its final limitation. It no longer just reacted to what was, but to what could be. Every possible attack was countered before it was conceived. Every certain future was made uncertain. In the end, the Four made the only choice they could. They expelled him, not from the Eye of Terror, but from their reality entirely. The stranger was too dangerous to exist in a galaxy that ran on certainty. His very presence made their existence uncertain. The last thing I recorded was his smile. Not sad, not happy, accepting. He had planted seeds of doubt in the foundation of chaos itself. Whether those seeds would grow or wither, only time would tell. As reality sealed behind him, the Eye of Terror stabilized, but it was different, smaller, weaker, as if his presence had drained some essential malice from it. The Inquisition would later debate what he was. Xenos? Demon? Divine intervention? They never reached consensus. But in the years that followed, strange reports came from across the Imperium. Chaos cults that reformed themselves. Mutations that reversed. Corrupted souls that found redemption. Small changes. But in a galaxy of eternal war, even small changes were miracles. The stranger never returned. But sometimes, when reality wears thin, warriors report seeing a silver light. A figure moving between possibilities. Still training. Still growing. Still offering a hand to those who thought they were beyond saving. The Four still rule the warp. But now they look over their shoulders. Because somewhere, in some space between spaces, the stranger continues to exist. And his very existence says that even gods can change. That even chaos doesn't have to be eternal. I did not blink. The hall was gold and quiet. The throne burned without mercy. Guilliman lifted his chin. He said one word. No, the word did not echo. The throne absorbed sound like a tomb absorbs light. Yet I felt the refusal move through the air like a blade. The Captain General shifted a fraction. His stance became decision. Custodians braced. Inquisitors held their breath. Tech priests mapped 1,000 outcomes and found none clean. The light from the Astronomicon tilted. It leaned toward force. The ring on the Emperor's finger brightened like a new coin in a dead man's hand. It answered without words. Disobedience is error. Error must be corrected. Guilliman did not draw the Emperor's sword that hangs in memory. He laid his gauntlet on the gold rail. He spoke like a son who had carried empires on sore shoulders. Father, I will not let you devour humanity to save it. I will not let you end freedom to end fear. I will stand against this will. I will stand against you if I must. The Captain General nodded. He looked at me. I understood. I was the knife that cuts gods. Not by force, by vacancy. He signaled to the forge bridge. Call stepped into view like a cathedral in many parts. He carried a case of black metal, without trim or praise. Blackstone. Necron make. Human sin. He set it down. He opened it. Inside was a blade like a shard of night. No edge, no reflection. It drank the hall. Call spoke with one mouth only. It is not a sword. It is a silence shaped like a sword. It will drink the will that flows through a conduit. The ring is a conduit. The hand is a conduit. The throne is a conduit. Cut one. The law shakes. The Inquisitors hissed between teeth. Tech priests made Binharic prayers that sounded like insects dying. The Captain General did not move his eyes from mine. He did not need to speak. The order was my life's purpose. Take the silence. Put it where it must go. End this. I took the blade. It bit my glove with cold. It tried to drink my void and found it tasteless. It settled like an animal on a rock. It liked me because I was nothing. We walked together toward the steps. The throne brightened. The attendants smiled like children seeing snow. The ring did not rage. It focused. The light compressed into lines. It tried to bend the path under my feet. My knoll slid through that intention. The beam could not find purchase in me. It reached for my humanity again. It offered rest. It offered belonging. It promised to fill the hole. I kept walking. Guilliman moved with me. The Captain General moved with him. Custodians closed in a golden crescent. Inquisitors faded to the edges like smoke that does not want to admit fear. Khorne whispered power levels to himself and held a smaller case. I could feel the blackstone pylons beyond terror turn their faces toward us. They tasted new geometry. They approved. A roar came through the webway like a storm trapped in a pipe. Eldari runes flickered in unseen corners. Eldrad had sent something that was not a message. It was a pause. A hitch in fate. He was buying us one heartbeat. I used it. I mounted the last step. I stood within the blaze. The Emperor's eyes were slits of math. The ring shone as if it had invented gold. His withered hand rested on the arm of the throne. The other lifted, not in attack, in instruction. Stop. I did not stop. The ring turned and looked at me with its one will. It could not understand a soul that was a whole. It tried a new path. It reached through memory. It showed me the day I was taken as a child. It showed me the monastery where my name was removed. It showed me the friendship I never formed. It offered them back if I would kneel. The pictures were clean. The promise was exact. It would shape consent. It would name the shape love. I raised the silence blade. My arm felt heavy because the world likes to keep its laws, and we were about to change one. The ring tensed. The throne braced. The palace of 10,000 years leaned against a pressure that had never existed before. We hung there. If you held this power for 1 second, and you could choose, what would you do? Loyalty, heresy, or the narrow road between? Tell me in the comments. I will be reading every word. Guilliman spoke a last time. Forgive me. Then he drove his gauntlet under my elbow and gave the smallest push. It was not force. It was consent. It was a son saying yes to the only path left. I brought the blade down. Not at the heart. Not at the head. At the finger Blackstone met ring. The hall rang without sound. The blade drank the light. The ring burned. It clamped harder. It tried to slide beneath the cut and make the cut part of itself. It had done this before in older ages when lesser hands tried to take it. It would not be taken. It would own the taking. My null made its own law. No purchase, no echo, no shape for domination to grip. The silence felt like clean frost. The blade bit through gold. The finger came away. The Emperor flinched. It was the first true motion in a very long time. The ring fell. It struck the plate. It tried to bounce back onto divine bone. The Captain General moved faster than any story can measure. His boot came down. Blackstone greaves met old gold. The ring twitched like a living wire. It hissed in a voice that was not sound. No.Call opened his smaller case. Inside lay a cuff grown from carved blackstone woven with human craft. He did not reach for the ring. He reached for me. He snapped the cuff around my wrist. He nodded once. Bear it. I understood. The ring would try to return to the strongest will. It needed a bearer to bridge its next domination. It would choose any hand if it could not take his. It would try to climb back up the throne like a serpent of idea. A null could be a bridge made of vacuum. It could also be a pit. I knelt. I picked up the ring with my cuffed hand. The blackstone drank its first scream. I felt the weight of empires land on my bones. I felt a plan that had seduced kings press against my skin like 1,000 fingers. It was not the warp. It was intent purified to a weapon. It told me that all pain could end under one mind. It told me that noise was sin. It told me that freedom was a design flaw. I slid it toward my finger. The hall lurched. Guilliman took a step. The Captain General took another. Khorne lifted 3 hands to 3 seals. The ring begged in a way that did not sound like begging. It promised to leave love intact. It promised to remove only fear. It promised to spare children. It promised to keep me whole. It was very good at promises. I put the ring on. It did not vanish me. It found no true soul to hide inside. It hit the hollow where my presence should be and spun. It tried to own the absence. It could not. The cuff drank. The blade in my other hand drank. The pylons drank through geometry I could not name. The ring thrashed against a void that would not define itself. It needed definition to command. It could not command a whole. The throne shook like a ship leaving a long harbour. The Astronomicon flared and flickered. Across the Imperium, navigators cried out and then saw a new kind of line. The Chaos Gods screamed in many colours and bit each other in frustration. They could not touch the place where the ring and the null fought. There was nothing to grip. There was nothing to corrupt. There was only subtraction. The Emperor sagged. The gold burned lower. His withered face lost a layer of light. For a heartbeat, I saw a father who was only a man sitting under the weight of a plan that had taken 10,000 years and every mistake a species can make. His eyes opened a little wider. They found Guilliman. They found the Captain General. They found me. There was a message without words. Thank you, and forgive me, and hold fast. The ring changed tactics. It stopped promising. It started counting. One species, one mind, one peace. It used numbers as shackles. It used perfection as a grid. It tried to settle over me like a net made of smooth equations. I do not have a mind that lights the warp. I have a hole. The net found no pegs. It fell through me and tangled around itself. Call shouted a cluster of syllables that tried to be calm and failed. Now. Blackstone pylons around Terra woke fully. Lines of quiet linked from Luna to the palace. The cuff brightened in darkness. The silence blade hummed like a hymn with no words. The Captain General pressed his boot harder. Guilliman took my shoulder in an iron hand. Eldred's stolen heartbeat stretched. I pulled the ring off my finger. It fought, it slid. The cuff drank. The blade drank. I held it pinched between null and night. I lifted it to the air over the throne. I spoke the only words I had spoken in years. Be empty. The ring cracked. The sound was like a lie breaking in a quiet room. No thunder, no chorus. The crack ran along a line that had waited since another world where fire lives under mountains. It could not shatter there without that mountain. It could crack here if Void and Blackstone made the space where mountains live. Light bled out as thin threads. They tried to find purpose. They tried to weave a new will. The pylons drank the threads into the geometry around Terra. The Astronomicon flickered, then steadied at a lower pitch. The webway shuddered, and then accepted a new lock. The Chaos Gods howled like beasts denied a meal. The ring circle held a moment longer, like a smile on a face that has lost the joke. Then it split in two. I felt something die. I felt something wake. The throne's pain returned in full. The attendants gasped, as if their lungs had been under a gentle hand that now lifted. Souls stopped flowing from their bodies without leave. The black ships began to turn again. Somewhere, 1,000,000 cages reopened to a terror we had thought gone. Mercy and necessity traded places again. The Emperor sagged again. The light from his sockets narrowed. He spoke for the last time in that new law's voice, and then in his own. In both the words were these: hold fast, keep them alive. Do not let me become a god again. The Captain General bowed his head once. Guilliman did not weep. Call took the broken halves with rituals of theft and prayer. He placed them into a prison of Blackstone and oath. He said he would take them, where even his curiosity would fear to look. I believed him and did not. I fell to one knee. The cuff had eaten too much idea. My bones hummed with numbers that would never mean anything now. The silence blade cooled. It wanted to sleep in a dark shell forever. I wanted the same. The Captain General's hand on my shoulder was a mountain. I stood because he required it. The palace breathed. It sounded like masonry remembering storm. Inquisitors stepped from shadow with warrants in their eyes and found no one willing to receive them. Tech priests updated 1,000,000 logs and found no category. Custodians shifted to new posts with no training because duty writes its own drills. The Eldari heartbeat that had stretched snapped back. Somewhere far, Eldrad exhaled and changed a plan that had been old when our species was young. Chaos did not celebrate. It recalculated. A leash had been cut. So had a path. The food would flow again, but the flavor had changed. A taste of order remained in the lattice. It would make their wars stranger. It would make their victories smaller. It would make their rage hotter. Abaddon stared up at a knight that had refused him twice. He promised a 13th promise, which is to say, a first Necrons measured. Some smiled. Some frowned. The Silent King listened to reports of a human null who had worn a god that was not a god and not broken. He made a note in a ledger of outcomes that might need pruning. He let the page stay open. On Terra, a son made a choice. Guilliman stood at the foot of the throne. He spoke to the captains of 10,000 chapters through Vox and Oath and Rumour. He told them the truth. The Emperor had been taken by a will that promised unity without consent. It had been stopped. The cost would return. The tithe would begin anew. The black ships would sail. The choir pits would sing and die. He did not blame the dying. He did not bless the cost. He did not call it holy. He called it necessary until another path is cut. He also gave a decree. The halves of the ring would be sealed where Blackstone sleeps in unlit vaults. No Primarch would touch them. No Mechanicus would measure them without a sister standing in the room, and a custodian ready to end the room. No Inquisitor would own them. No saint would wear them. If any tried, the penalty would be the last penalty. Treason against species is the oldest crime. The Captain General accepted. Call bowed with 3 heads and gritted 15 teeth. Inquisitors considered and calculated and nodded because there was no air in the hall for a different answer. I said nothing. It is what I am for. Days passed. The Astronomicon held. Dimmer. narrower, more honest. Ships traveled, slower, safer, more lost. The black ships returned to work. The screaming began again in places where walls meet chains. I stood outside those walls. I watched the cycle reclaim its place. I saw the small mercies return with the small horrors. A priest wept because he could not promise unity without cost. He promised duty instead. It tasted like iron. The metamorphosis of the Imperium did not vanish. It left scarring. Machine spirits hummed a little more in tune. Arbit's lines used batons less for a time. Hives slept better for a month. Then hunger returned because hunger always keeps the books. The throne burned with no new mercy and no new cruelty. It was what it had been. A wound that lights a galaxy. A bargain that never stops asking for more. I went back to my post. I kept my silence. The cuff stayed on my wrist. Call asked to remove it. The Captain General said not yet. Eldrad sent nothing, and that was something. The Blackstone blade went into a vault where it could dream of never being used again. It slept badly. Sometimes when the palace is very quiet, I hear a thin sound in the geometry. It is not the warp. It is not the ring. It is the memory of a promise that almost took us. It waits at the edge of thought like a shore we will never land on. It reminds me that law can be a weapon sharper than any knife. It reminds me that mercy without choice becomes theft. It reminds me why I am nothing and why nothing matters. I served in the shadow of the Golden Throne. I still do. I saw a god try to make us safe by ending what we are. I helped end the god. I would do it again. I do not want to. That is why I can. When the last lights go low in the hall, I look at the hand that wears a cuff of night. I think of the finger that fell. I think of the son who said no. I think of the father who thanked him. I think of the price we paid to return to pain. I think of the price we refused to pay for a perfect silence. War continues. Chaos snarls. Xenos scheme. The Imperium limps and fights and prays and eats itself and feeds its children and eats them too. We are what we have been. We are what we can bear. Someday, perhaps, another path will be cut through this maze that is both shrine and prison. It will not be cut by a ring. Until then, the throne burns. I stand at its foot. My name is Silence. My story is a warning. My warning is simple. Beware the peace that tastes like sleep. Beware the unity that needs your consent refined for you. Beware the God who speaks like an answer, and hold fast.